Welcome back. The Red Man's back on that whenever I feel like it upload schedule because lately I've been playing Cyberpunk 2077. 2077? 2077? Never mind. Contrary to what the utterly unhinged outrage over the, quote, state of the game is, it runs all right on my squarely middleweight PC. Intel i5 7600 processor with NVIDIA 1050 graphics card and 16 gigabytes of RAM. It's not a potato by any stretch, but it's also not exactly a nuclear submarine of hardware. Still, the game is far from polished. In particular, the Steam graphics and lighting graphics are often doing something best described as a grand mal seizure, and the enemy AI is dialed all the way down to durr. But for actual bugs, in 30 hours I've had one crash and one door that wouldn't open to loot, even though I had the damned access card necessary to open it. That actually pissed me off more than the crash. I like my loot. The point is, the obvious reality of Cyberpunk's rough but totally working state is completely at odds with the current narrative about it. It's not noticeably more buggy than any other open-world AAA game in the past 15 years. Witcher 3 was buggy when it came out. Fallout New Vegas was buggy when it came out. Fallout 3 was buggy when it came out. Skyrim is still buggy if you don't get patches made by fans who do Bethesda's job for them. And speaking of Bethesda, the syphilitic ass clowns, Fallout 76 was infinitely worse than Cyberpunk, and probably still is. Cyberpunk runs on a fundamental level on most platforms. Fallout 76 was universally broken beyond comprehension everywhere. There is actually a game of some content and quality underneath the rough debut of Cyberpunk. Fallout 76 was a lazy asset flip of Fallout 4 with no actual point to it, basically a polished turd, but without any polish. Anyone who is comparing Cyberpunk to Fallout 76 is either a blatant liar or playing cards with half a deck, if you get my drift. They're retarded. But lots of people are making that comparison, and Sony and Microsoft, the unscrupulous snakes, are offering refunds for Cyberpunk when they never did that for the tire fire that was Fallout 76. The New York Times is writing pretentious articles about what a disaster that is Cyberpunk, when as far as I can tell, they never mentioned Fallout 76 and that months-long perpetually compounding disaster. So why is those things? Why is the response to Cyberpunk's rough but far from unprecedented launch anywhere near the level of response to Fallout 76's utterly catastrophic entire existence? In my mind, it comes down to two things. The first and less damaging is clickbaiting dweebs. There are clearly a fair few opportunistic people rapidly mashing out videos and articles and blog posts and tweets and so on about what an ungodly disaster this is, because that sort of sensationalism gets the views, aka the measure of pure uncut attention that you fucking Zoomers have tried to replace your blood with. But with basically any given topic of actual visibility, there are always many of those clickbaiting dweebs, usually on both sides of a given issue to one extent or another. Just look at this video's title. The more significant and insidious culprit driving this excessive outrage is gaming media populated by journalists attempting to perpetrate an organized hit on CD Projekt RED. The communist imbeciles in games journalism, along with a Twitter swarm of estrogen-poisoned, brainlet attack dogs, have clearly had it out for CD Projekt RED for years now, because of several instances of CDPR not bending the knee to their woke whining and virtue signaling. And they've seized on this rough launch that, at the risk of repeating myself, isn't noticeably worse than normal for an open-world AAA game nowadays, to try and ruin CDPR. Again. And it's definitely organized. That's how these malignant locusts operate. They have their Facebook groups and their Discord chats where they plan their next hit. What makes it excruciatingly obvious in this case is the New York Times joining in. The New York Times has, in past years, cast off any disguise of journalistic integrity or any other form of integrity known to man to become nothing but a soapbox to be used for every stripe of progressive putz to whine about whatever is currently triggering them. And everything is always currently triggering them. But the New York Times didn't rush to disapprovingly shake their heads at BioWare or over Mass Effect Andromeda. or to wag their fingers at BioWare over Anthem, or to tut-tut at Bethesda over every buggy mess they've ever made, not even over Fallout 76, which was, at the risk of repeating myself yet again, a far bigger disaster than Cyberpunk 2077. The New York Times did acknowledge the controversy over Electronic Arts' Star Wars Battlefront 2, but only because that had actually made international news and how its bullshit had caused Belgium to ban loot boxes. But for games that are merely buggy, only when they're made by a developer that doesn't suck woke cock does the New York Times step in with a hit piece. And that's what this is, a deliberate hit piece. It's undeniably a willful smear by far-left progressivists aimed at CD Projekt RED. Don't believe me? We'll run through the article, which will be linked in the description, and point out the blatant editorializing and outright lies in it masquerading as journalism. Hey guys, it's Future Redman. The New York Times has updated their article since past Redman, the bleeding moron, recorded the audio for this video, but before he actually took screen caps of the article. They removed the entire opening paragraph that past Redman is about to spend a solid minute ranting about. The only indication they did this is a little article updated date in the fine print. No explicit retraction of this garbage or acknowledgement that it existed, the craven weasels. Which is why I'm leaving in the part where I criticize it, even though the only proof of this paragraph having existed is the quote of it written in my script for the video audio. Well, that and laziness in editing. Lesson learned. Get the screen caps before recording the audio, Redman, you gormless schmuck. Now throwing you back to past Redman. Go get him, bro. See, right here in the first paragraph, they open with biased and incorrect language meant to make the situation in public opinion for CDPR worse than it actually is. Quote, nearly a decade of hype led to a troubled release riddled with glitches, a livid fanbase, refunds for potentially millions of players, and a possible class action lawsuit. First of all, livid fanbase is bullshit. At worst, the fanbase is kind of split. I see many people saying the game runs alright and they're having fun, especially if they're on PC. The article spends a few paragraphs fairly matter-of-factly setting the stage for Cyberpunk's release until it gets to this little humdinger. Quote, since the release of Cyberpunk 2077 on December 10th, thousands of gamers have created viral videos featuring a multitude of glitches and bugs, many hilarious, that mar the game. They include tiny trees covering the floors of buildings, tanks falling from the sky, and characters standing up, inexplicably pantsless, while riding motorcycles. These videos depict a game that is virtually unplayable, rife with errors, populated by characters running on barely functional artificial intelligence, and largely incompatible with the older gaming consoles meant to support it. Fans are livid. First of all, it's kind of poor form to keep using the word livid. Why not just say they're angry or mad? Secondly, to repeat myself again, fans aren't livid. They're split at worst. Finally, and most importantly, the implication that the game is, quote, virtually unplayable is a blatant lie led into with weasel words like virtually. Any half-respectable editor would have had a conniption fit reading trash like this, but there's no respectability left at the New York Times, so this trash got published anyway. And the Redman is here to tell you, personally, that the game is entirely playable, at least on a thoroughly average PC. I can't testify to last-gen consoles because I had more sense than to buy it for a decade-old toaster. My PS4 can barely run Genshin Impact without dropping frames like Michael J. Fox trying to juggle in an antique shop. I've got more sense than to trust it with Cyberpunk. The point is that the New York Times is trying to establish that Cyberpunk doesn't work just by saying it doesn't work. They don't have any proof that it doesn't, because the truth is that it does work. The Redman and many others can testify to that. The New York Times and Mike Azek and Kellen Browning are lying their asses off in the name of spearing the woke mafia's target du jour. The hatchet job of an article continues. Cyberpunk's rollout is one of the most visible disasters in in the history of video games. This is not only a lie, easily spotted by anyone with a memory better than a goldfish, but one that tries to make something true just by repeating the lie enough. If it weren't for the concerted effort by left-wing media and games journalism, though I continue to repeat myself, this wouldn't be any more visible than the other buggy AAA releases I've listed. But these conniving shits didn't orchestrate a media circus over the disaster that was Mass Effect Andromeda, even though that did more damage to BioWare than this could possibly do to CDPR. The only visible disaster here is one that progressive media jackals are trying to manufacture. The article continues to meander on for a while, and as an aside, I don't know why every journalist nowadays insists on writing their articles like they're freaking prose, causing them to be at least 4 times longer than they actually need to be to get the point across. Just get to the bloody point without all the superfluous paragraphs that read like a cheap novel. There are even some bits in here that are mostly just factual reporting, a neat glimpse at a bygone relic of a better age of journalism that never really existed to the extent we wish it did. Late in the article, they say this, quote, "For months, reviewers, including those at the New York Times, tried to obtain review copies for the game consoles released by Sony and Microsoft this year. Stephanie Bayer, a spokeswoman for CD Projekt RED, said in a previous email correspondence that the company would hold off sending our console codes until close to launch so that they could send them securely. That never happened." This is nothing more than access media vultures complaining that they aren't given special privileges to get games ahead of the peasants in order to inform those peasants of what their opinions should be. And I can't imagine why CDPR didn't feel compelled to give these bloodsuckers early access to the game, considering a good decade worth of evidence that games journalists are mostly a combination of stupid and malicious. A decision that was justified when Polygon's review upon actually getting the game featured 7 paragraphs of whining that the game wasn't transsexual enough. Why would anyone take any step to placate these deranged imbeciles? The Time continues on, cherry-picking all of 2 people mentioning their occupations for absolutely no pertinent reason to portray the game as unplayable, which is a game I can easily play by cherry-picking several more people to show the game is totally playable. The article ends with a quote from CDPR. Quote, "Worry not," the company tweeted, assuring fans that Cyberpunk 2077 would be huge and story-driven. "No hidden catch, you get what you pay for." Now, I may be tilting at windmills, but this seems like a veiled shot at CDPR for not trying to nickel and dime the player to death with microtransactions like Red Dead 2, GTA 5, Avengers, and many other games have done. I do not understand the establishment media's boner for microtransactions. Anyway, to wrap this up, I think it's pretty obvious that media outlets, along with their horde of useful idiot Twitter screechers, are trying to carry out a hit on CDPR specifically by feeding into and exaggerating the blowback to the launch of Cyberpunk beyond what the reality of the situation would ever merit. They've been out to smear CDPR for years, and the Times hit piece article is the quintessential example of dishonest reporting willfully designed to damage CDPR, regardless of the facts. Let me know your take in the comments, and you'll hear from me next time. Have a good one till then.